This is Radio WINNEBA, WINNEBA 98.3 FM.
Mixing.
This is Radio WINNEBA, WINNEBA 98.3 FM.
Shine your eyes, come on, let's unite. From the north to the south and central, we are one. Oh, let's decide.
Curriculum, social change and national development, and of course, functions of education, level 100. We already have our lecturers in the studio. Mr. Stephen KWAKYE-APAU. Miss MIRIAM OGAH is also here, and of course, Sir Alex TETTEH as well in the studio to take you through today's radio lecture. They are from the Foundation of Education, UW. So, today we are dealing with the topic functions of education. So, I'll go straight to Dr. Chami, as usual. I'll go straight to Dr. Chami.
Nana. All right, thank you very much. Good evening to our cherished viewers and our cherished listeners from Facebook and other media platforms. This evening we are coming your way with another, I won't say another, because today happens to be the very first time we're meeting this semester. So it's a pleasure having you with us. We're going to be with you throughout this very semester. I'm quite privileged because today it appears I have a gentleman and our madam joining us in the studio to help me do this discussion. And so I have Mr. Alex TETTEH from the Department of Educational Foundations, as well as Miss MIRIAM OGAH from the same department and from the same faculty, School of Education and Lifelong Learning. And together we are going to bring to you another, should I say tantalizing, or another segment of our radio lecture series on EDC 111, the School Curriculum, Social Change and National Development. As far as today's discussion is concerned, we're going to look at functions of education. And to put this in proper context, I'm sure we cannot look at the functions of education without necessarily considering the meaning of education and the types of education before we look at the functions as well. So basically this evening, that is what we are going to do. We will start from the meaning of education, types of education, and then finally we will conclude on the functions of education, or why we even educate. And so to help me do this discussion, like I said earlier, is Miss MIRIAM OGAH and Mr. Alex TETTEH. So I'll start from Miss MIRIAM OGAH. Miss MIRIAM OGAH, your welcome note before we start the presentation.
All right. So thank you very much, dear students and cherished viewers. It's a pleasure coming your way this evening, like you rightly said. So we envisage that this semester is going to be a very interactive one as far as the radio lecture and the course is concerned. And so we expect our students, or we encourage them to find time and then have the interactive sessions with us. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Alex TETTEH.
Yes, thank you, Steve. I welcome students, especially level 100 students taking this course. They should be glued to their seats and participate in this evening's interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're going to do the discussion in within say 45 minutes. Then we will activate the phone lines, and the number remains 0503923158. 0503923158. This number doubles as a WhatsApp platform and an SMS as well. So if you have questions, you have contributions, and you have anything that you may want to share with us in the studio, you can equally do so through this number or on our social media handles on Twitter, on Facebook, and we will surely take you from there. And so we're starting the discussion. Education, education, education. Miss MIRIAM, I would want to begin with you.
Okay. So as far as the concept education is concerned, I believe this is not the first time that our students are hearing the word. They might have learned about it before. So we would want to trace it to the origin of the word. So we say that etymologically, education comes from the Latin word educere, which means to lead out. And so if we want to conceptualize this as far as the the training of our dear students are concerned, then we all need to bear in mind that there is a deliberate attempt to, as part of their studies here, that at the end of the day, they need to stand out. There are certain features or skills or values that they need to possess, such that when they stand out there, it will be obvious that, in fact, they stand out amongst those who have not perhaps received much of what they have. Or it can also mean educate, which means to form or to train. If you want to form something or train something, or train an individual, it can even be an animal. You pay particular attention, you devote much time, there is commitment in that deliberate attempt to train your pet or your animal. And so as far as our students are concerned, there is a deliberate attempt to train them, to form them, so that they will be the desired citizens that we expect. Not only our students, but anybody who receives education, day in, day out, we all receive education. We are yet to look at the characteristics though, but nobody can say that he or she is exempted from education. Our students need to bear in mind that we have a difference between education and schooling. So as far as this is concerned, we are looking at the total development of the learner, and not necessarily paying school fees and packing your things and saying you are going to school. That is an aspect of education.
Mr. Ete?
Yeah, I need not add more, because exactly that is what she has said. Yeah.
And so basically all we're trying to say is that, and I want to take it from where Madam ended, that we cannot have a human being who is not educated. Because everybody that comes to this earth, and that is why Castle will say education is what happens to human persons from the day they are born to the day they die. So irrespective of what comes out of the womb, once it's a human being, then of course education is going to happen to this very person. And so I come back to Mr. Tetteh. R.S. Peter says, yes, Madam said education is not the same as schooling. Then from R.S. Peter's perspective, what then should count as education?
Thank you very much. It is easy to perceive what education actually is. But when you are asked to put words together to define it, it becomes so difficult. Especially when you are defining with the intention that your definition should not be criticized. It's impossible. Because what you need to do, what you need to know and be able to do for you to be called an educated person is quite subjective and contextual. It depends on the culture where you find yourself. So you may be so enlightened in mathematics and you are in Ghana, you were taught in English. When you get to UK, any Francophone country, with the mathematics and everything you know is likely to be nil, because you cannot even express yourself. You see, good. Aside that, so the issue of determining what actually constitutes education has been a problem for some time. But one person, R.S. Peters, thought that he could come out with a criteria that will serve as a benchmark that could be used to judge whether an endeavor qualifies to be education or not. So he came out with 3 criteria. And the first one, according to him, any endeavor, any activity, any process that is said to be education should transmit what is worthwhile. It should transmit what is worthwhile. And he continues by saying that, you see, if he ends there, it should transmit what is worthwhile.
To who?
To who? Yes, because what is worthwhile to me, I can tell you that it may not be worthwhile to you. So he ended it right there, that to those who become committed to it. And so you will see that in this university, everybody came to study a particular program, whether major or minor. You chose your choice. You had your choice. That means that you are going to be committed to it. And any other course is not likely to be, any other program is not likely to be in the interest of you. Yes. The next criteria, so to remind charity learners, the first one is that whatever we call education, any endeavor, any activity we call education, should carry in it something that is worthwhile, at least to those who are committed to it. Good. Then the second criteria, he says that whatever we call education, any endeavor, any process we call education, must involve knowledge and understanding, such that that knowledge and understanding, in the course of acquiring it, you at least, you see, it should involve the use of your mind. You should engage in some activities in order to acquire that knowledge. If not at all, your mind should be at work, such that you should not just be sleeping and say you have learned, you have been educated. That you sit in class, you don't do anything, and then you say you are educated. No. Then that will be intuition. That will be divine education it is a revelation to you, because you didn't do anything, you just had it. That is not education. You must engage in some activities such that at least the brain will be doing some activity. So we say that activity, that endeavor must involve knowledge and understanding and some sort of cognitive perspectives, which is not innate. So it means you should not be sleeping, you should not be adamant and say you are acquiring education. No. At least the brain should be engaged in something. Right. 3, and the last one, according to him, it's not all processes. It's not all means of education that can be described as a means of education. There are some means of education that should be ruled out. He couldn't mention all the means, but at least he gave it one. That whatever we call education should allow the learner, the one who is benefiting from the education, should give that person some willingness and voluntariness. Willingness to have that education, voluntariness to attain that education. And so these are the 3. If you subject these 3 criteria into critical scrutiny, you will see that there may be some shortfalls. But that is according to him. So that is a discussion. If you think that there should be another criteria, or there is something that we should take out, that is what, when we get to class, we have to discuss and also bring your thoughts on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so if you are with us, this is still Radio WINNEBA 98.3, and this evening we are discussing functions of education. But like I said earlier, we cannot just zoom in to discuss functions of education when we have not put it in the right perspective or the proper context. And so we started from the meaning of education, and we are transitioning to other aspects that we have to know before we end the discussion. The phone number remains 0503-923158. 0503-923158. And so, Miss Miriam, I come back to you. The types of education, in brief, what should our students know?
Yeah, so briefly, as far as the types are concerned, from previous experiences, as far as our learners prior to coming here is concerned, we were introduced to the fact that we have 3 basic types of education: formal education, informal education, and then non-formal education. So the formal education, usually during the discussion in the lecture hall, it is very easy for the students to appreciate that, because they know that they are products of it. Yeah. But when it comes to the informal, the non-formal, that is where there are certain things that we want to contextualize very well before they appreciate it. And so we're looking at formal education like the hierarchically structured, in terms of the fact that you begin at one level, then you move finally to the university. Like they are here, we are being taught by experts on the field, i.e. teachers or lecturers. So we come to informal education that we all receive prior to stepping foot in the classroom for the first time. And so we are born with some experiences. Even babies that are being nursed, they receive education. So when it comes to weaning them, eating, even the exclusive breastfeeding and everything, as soon as they have the breast in the mouth, they know that they need to, in order to be satisfied. So right from birth, that is why Castle says that is the cradle to grave experience. Okay, so that is it. We receive it day in, day out, up to the whichever level, until probably we face off from this earth. And so our students, there's one thing that they need to know, that these types of education, they are not so distinct such that at a point you will say, I'm receiving only formal education. Then at another angle you say, oh no, I'm receiving only, you can be receiving the 3 at the same time. So for example, the informal one that is with us all the time, even in the lecture hall, we can be learning certain things that are informal, though it is formal education. I believe our students have gained some experiences so far, second semester, things that are not deliberately part of the formal education though, but due to interaction with one another in the environment, they might have learned them. Some have also attained some skills from colleagues, maybe baking, dressmaking or something from friends. Some are learning, they've enrolled in driving schools and they are learning. Meanwhile, they came here for formal education. So by the time they may leave here, they would leave with a good number of experiences as far as the types are concerned.
So that has to do with the
non-formal. Yeah. So we go to the non-formal education. You realize that the non-formal education has a bit of the formal aspect and then the informal. Okay, so we're looking at, it is organized. Formal education is also organized. We have this kind of systematic activities. Formal education, we take our students through systematic, what we are even doing is a systematic one, until finally they exit here in 4 years or depending on the program they are reading. And it is meant to provide selected types of learning to a particular subgroups of people in the population. So we can talk about adult education, for example, which is one of the main areas that is very common. And you realize that if the Efutu municipality is to introduce an adult education program, yes, it is going to target adults, but it's not all adults that may have interest. For example, if it is going to, if the program is meant to educate or teach them on, let's say, numeracy, literacy, and maybe some doing of some arithmetic, some adults in Efutu might already have knowledge and experiences on when it comes to reading either the Efutu language, in the Efutu language or English language. Some adults here can speak English, so this type of education may not target them. And so we say that it is subgroups of people in the society, those who may need the kind of skills and experiences that the type of education that is a non-formal intends to give to those who become committed to it. So that is something brief about the
Mr. I don't know if you may want to
yes, to add a little. I normally say that non-formal education is given to people who are already engaged in some activity, or they are in a certain condition and they need certain skills or knowledge to either improve upon what they do or improve upon their condition. So you can cite many examples, and like let's use the normally I like using the expectant mothers in the hospital. When you go to antenatal, you meet various kinds of people. I mean, women who are pregnant, those who are educated, those who are not educated, those who are old, those who are young, they are all there. Even the nurses themselves, the medical doctors, you also have some of them sitting there, and they are educated. That education given to them on how to carry themselves and all that is non-formal education, in the sense that, you see, they need that information and knowledge to improve upon their condition and what they are carrying in their situation. When you select medical doctors, and there are new rights and responsibilities of patients, what we call patients charter. Here, they are medical doctors. They don't really need any formal, as we know, formal education. But there is a new way of doing things in the hospital to improve upon what they do as medical doctors. We give them education. We may call it orientation, but that would not be a better one. We give them that education you give to them to improve upon what they do as medical doctors. It's non-formal education. Yeah. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Tetteh. I think I've enjoyed the discussion. So, you want to say that the non-formal is just provided to fill a certain gap?
Sure.
Or certain identified, I don't want to use the term deficiency.
Yeah. I would prefer that. It's okay. Yeah, it's a deficiency. Some situations it may not be a deficiency.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we have a number of examples that we can cite to show that as far as non-formal education is part and parcel of us. And the understanding our students have to get is that Ms. Miriam said it is provided for a particular group of people within a population.
Yeah.
So that type of education is not meant for everyone. Everybody, but just kind of a cohort within a larger group. And so there may be taxi drivers in WINNEBA. You may want to sample those who don't have license to say that, okay, all of you are taxi drivers, but we need only those who do not have license.
So you see that they are connected by the need, the skill or the knowledge they need. They are connected by that. That is what makes them common. That is the only ground by which they are common.
But our students need to understand that, yes, they will be given certificates. So somebody asked me, we are saying that formal education, we give certificate, but non-formal too, they give certificate. Then I said that you cannot use the certificate from the non-formal to enroll in a formal setting to say that I've attended a workshop in Accra, and so I want to use the certificate from that workshop to enroll myself in the university. No, it is not done. Miss Miriam, do you want to add anything?
Oh, I think that is it.
But they need to know
that is why initially I said that you see, the non-formal education has certain aspects. It's a kind of a combination of the two. So in one area you realize that it has some of the features of formal education, and then at another angle some aspects of the informal.
Thank you very much. And so if you are with us, this is still Radio WINNEBA 98.3, and this evening we are discussing the functions of education. Like I said earlier, we could not just have started with the functions. We had to start from the meaning of education. Madam introduced the concept to say education may come as educere or educare. We moved on to look at the different interpretations that people have given to the word education. We just spoke about the types of education, saying that we have the formal, the informal, and the non-formal. At this point, we are moving on to the functions of education. And we are saying that we educate for various reasons. We have various reasons. For instance, if you take this university, we have thousands of students and everybody has a reason for coming. It is not everyone who is here for the first class that you are thinking about or the second upper that you are thinking of. Sometimes if we want to escape the wrath of our parents, we enroll in education and all that. So we have various functions of education. But from where we sit, if you want to put all these functions together, we are saying that, we are not saying it is exclusive. What we are saying is that you may have the social functions of education, you may have the economic functions of education, you may have the cultural functions of education, and you may have the political functions of education. So I want to begin with Mr. Tetteh. So socially, why do we educate?
Yes, thank you very much. And I like the way you put it, that a society may intend to educate its people, and there may be so many reasons or functions, reasons for which they are establishing the school, but then these are key, central. Yeah, so it begins from the social functions. Human beings, we are social beings, and so we know that in fact, the school, we know from senior high school that it is an agency of socialization, and the teachers are agents. And for that matter, the school is a major factor in the socialization of the people in the society. So when we establish a school, there are two things that we expect a school to, in fact, one thing that we expect a school to do. The purpose, the main reason for which we establish the school is the mandate. And that mandate is what we may call manifest functions of education. So when you go to school and you are able to learn and exhibit these functions that the society expects that you should possess and demonstrate by the time you complete that school, if you are able to show them, you are demonstrating manifest functions. Those consequences of education, or those outcomes of education, they are anticipated, they are expected. They are anticipated, they are recognized in the sense that that is the reason for which we put the school there. That is the reason for which we say we should have education. That is the first one. So if you go to school and maybe you went to school in a francophone country and you are back and you can speak French fluently, it is not strange.
Yeah.
You went, and that because we expect that school should teach you in French, and so you are able to speak French. The same way, you schooled in Ghana, and so you went to senior high school, you came back, you are able to speak English, you are able to think critically, you are able to solve mathematics. And I said in class, you are able to recite the multiples of 9. And the students were saying, no, some of them are not able to. But you realize that if you see that we are laughing because it's strange. Because you expect that by the time you complete senior high university, multiples of 9 should not be anything difficult to you. So those things that we expect a school to be able to help you do, they are manifest functions. Yes. Then the second one, we call it latent function of education. The latent ones are those that we don't really expect the school to imbue them in us. They don't expect the school to, through the school, whether actions and inactions of the school lead us to attain them. Yet we end up attaining them because it's a social institution. Yes. So I like using the funny adage that where God prepares his plantain, that is where the devil also roasts his hope. The issue here to it is that in as much as we put up a school to give us education, because we are social beings, in the course of going through to attain these manifest functions, we also attain some outcomes or functions of education that are not obvious. They are not recognized. They may not be bad. Some may be bad, some may be good. Those ones are what we call latent functions of education.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Madam, I'll come to you. Do you want to add anything?
Oh, I think that.
So if after first semester or after spending 3 years in the senior high school, I go home and I'm able to use the cutlery set. These are behaviors my parents expect.
Yeah.
So normally in the classroom, I tell students that anytime you go home and you exhibit a behavior, and it starts with this, especially in Chi, they will say, "Hey, no be a wako sukuna." Then we are moving into the latent. Because once you go to school, there are certain behaviors, there are certain I don't know how to describe it, but there are some attitudes that the society will be quite surprised. They don't expect that somebody, you go to school, you return and you have your tufista, the knicker is somewhere, the shirt is somewhere, and somebody will look at you and say, now obi awako school. Then we are moving into the latent. But assuming after spending 4 years from here, you call your parents to tell them there is time for graduation. After all, they expect that 4 years you should graduate. But if after 7 years you are still doing first degree, they will ask you. That's why Mr. Etta said it can be positive and negative. So I went to a class the other time, and most of my students, I don't know what happened, some are pregnant and all that, so I had to use them as examples that they come in here, the parents didn't expect them, especially the unmarried ones. These are not anticipated. These are not recognized. But once it happens, it is latent. It may be positive.
Yeah.
You getting a baby at the university, look at how proud you feel. It may be positive, but then the society. But once you go home and you have bleached your skin, you call it toning and all that, and your parents look at you and they are surprised. So that is the technical term we have to use, surprised. Once there is a surprise, it is latent. Once it is not surprise and it is obvious, everybody expects it, like Mr. Tate going home and speaking English in the family house. Somebody who has done first degree,
second degree.
So if you speak English, it is no news.
Let me say something for Miriam to come in. The surprise issue. sometimes the surprise could also be manifest.
Mm.
For example,
You
I'm
came
unable
with-
to fast. I went to a seminary, and by the time I come back, I was initially unable to fast for an hour. I don't know, an hour too strange, maybe 6 hours or a day. Then suddenly, after coming from the seminary, I'm able to do 2 days, 3 days. People will be surprised, and also. So,
That's why we said both the latent and the manifest, they can be positive.
Yes.
And like you coming, maybe the result you had from the SHS wasn't good. So you had to write series of NOVDEC exams. So you get to the university and graduation day, your parents come and first class to the overall best. Though it is positive, but it may be surprise to the family because there is somebody that and it has so NASA kind of. So, Miss
I
Miriam.
believe where Mr. Letter was coming from was that the latent functions or the manifest functions, sometimes one could be surprised. Let me give you an example. You were making a point about maybe some of the students, especially the unmarried ones, then they go home, they are pregnant. Those ones that their parents are even the one taking care of them. If you are married and probably you are working already, pregnancy, your parents know that you can cater for yourself and then the upkeep of the baby. But there is another angle that your parents, will not be surprised. If we are known by our parents know us. So when you go to, they would rather be surprised that, hey, upon how they
How are
going
you
to school,
able to sustain yourself in all this?
they know the kind of life you are living out there.
Yeah.
So you go home and come back, oh, they are not surprised. I'm not surprised. It's one of those things.
All right.
Anyways.
Thank you very much, colleagues. And so we're still discussing the functions of education. And here, what we have to let our students understand that we educate to fulfill first family, ourselves. Then we move to family, we move to the community, and then we move to the nation at large. So we don't just educate for education's sake. There is always a purpose. And the first one that we spoke about has to do with the social functions of education, where we established that socially we can have the manifest functions, which are anticipatory in nature, and then we can have the latent, which are not recognized and therefore, but either recognized or not, we are saying it could be positive or negative. And when it is negative, we call it dysfunction. When it is positive, we call it ill function. So our students have to bear this in mind. So culturally, Miss Miriam, why do we educate?
So in terms of the cultural functions of education, we will say that do you appreciate your culture? This is rhetorical. Do you appreciate your culture? Our students are listening to us. If yes, if no, we are good to go now. There are instances when those of us who may have friends outside Ghana or Africa, when they share some of their experiences with us, some of us, like myself, will say, "Baby, Aneha, you go and it's because what I appreciate some of the things that are the way the Ghanaian kind of living is going for me." So I said, "Okay, as for visit, I may go and come, but to say I'm going to stay there, I can't. Let me just stay here." The reason is that culture, like we were taught prior to the university, that it's a way of life of a group of people. So that way of life over there, when they share it, and the way of life here, then I said, oh, okay, then it's a bit better. All right. This way of life of a group of people living in a community or a society, the way of life include what they eat. So if you are not a fan of the vegetables and all that, you realize that when you go to a foreign land, you may struggle at the beginning because you may always want to eat your TZ, your Dieho, your and all that. All right. This includes the way they dress, their music, their dance, their festivals, and everything. And so it is a dream. We all come from various families, and families have values that they uphold. And sometimes when we are going to school, especially when we are leaving them to boarding house, senior high, or the university, they try to remind us to uphold the values of the family. These families are not different from the society that we find ourselves, in this case Ghana. And so as far as education is concerned, or as far as the cultural functions of education is concerned, education generally has a role to play. We must transmit those aspects of our culture that we cherish, just like families remind us of the family values and what we need to do and the don'ts and all that. So those aspects of our culture, the way of life, the food we eat, the festivals and all that, we must transmit it through education. So if you look at the curriculum very well, you realize that the Ghanaian heritage is upheld, such that lessons on social studies, we are not saying that there should be a subject called cultural studies like it used to be in the JSS time. We are not saying there should be a subject called cultural studies before we know that we're going to transmit the Ghanaian culture from generation to generation. But there could be themes and topics about our culture, and it is clearly in our school curriculum. Look at social studies, subjects like social studies, like world, our people, like religious and moral education, like history. All these topics or subjects that we are mentioning, they have something to do as far as the transmission of our culture is concerned. And so it is very important. Now, you realize that the one way by which man differs from other living organisms is that we have created culture, and this culture must be transmitted. And so we put in certain measures that will enable us to transmit this culture from generation to generation. The cultural functions of education comes in two dimensions. We have the conservative, to conserve, or also known as a preservative dimension. You see, recently, if we look at some of the activities of the illegal miners, the Galamsey, it got to a time that almost everybody was alarmed because there was a need for us to conserve what? The environment. In social studies, there is a topic on conservation and preservation of the environment. So it is important that we conserve our culture. The environment we're talking about is part of our culture. That is why we don't experience snow here, but you go to other cultures and then they experience. So the first dimension under the cultural functions of education, we have conservative, also known as the preservative dimension. And then we have the dynamic or the change aspect as far as the transmission of our culture is concerned. Now, what does this conservative and preservative dimensions, what does it mean? We can talk about some of some aspects of our culture, be it the rites of passage, naming, outdooring, festivals, etc. So, through education, these topics, naming, marriage, funerals, it has been preserved in our curriculum. It is transmitted through informal education by our parents or grandparents here and there. The dynamic aspect now looks at or tries to trace the changes that have occurred in these cultural practices. So if we take the festivals, for example, if we look at how Abuache Festival, Fintu Afashe Festival, if we look at how it was organized then and then now, so the topic remains festivals, but in contemporary times, certain things have been added. So I told my students that the Orange Friday and the Lemon Thursday, the Abuache Festival, with the students, they were on campus. Most of them experienced it. So look at it. In those days, did we have anything like the Lemon Thursday? No. And in fact, these are aspects that we are waiting for. So you realize that when it gets to the Grand Eba on Saturdays, people are waiting for the artists of the night, especially the youth, not the Grand Eba where we will learn some of these things. So gradually you will see that when it comes to these aspects of our culture, we can talk about naming. When you're a gentleman, a basket, a cutlass is placed beside you to symbolize what? Hard work. A female, a basket and all that. Our students are taught this in our books, in the curriculum, and then practically too. You realize that there have been some dynamics in how these cultural values are transmitted from generation to generation. So our students are reminded of two things here. That when it comes to the role that education plays as far as the transmission of our culture is concerned, we have the conservative, also known as the preservative, those ones that we have upheld. And then the second aspect looks at the changes. We say culture is dynamic, is that not it? Yeah. It continues to change. So those changes we try to establish them. Prior to this medium, I'm sure when the university began, there was something like radio lecture. Today, look at where we are, radio lecture.
Yeah.
Mr. Ete, do you want to add anything?
I think it's well there too.
So at this point, I'm sure we can activate the phone lines. Sure. 0503 923158. Please, with all due respect, you must lower the radio set before you call. You position yourself well so that we wouldn't have to spend enough time asking who are you and all that. So when you phone in, you mention your name and your department, and if you have a contribution and you have a question, then you can equally do so. We are moving on whilst awaiting our phone calls. So we move to the economic functions of education, and once we are privileged to have an economics teacher among us, I'm sure he will do us the honor by taking us through the economic functions of education.
Okay, thank you very much. So economic functions of education looks at the role education plays in an economy, especially with respect to economic growth and development. So the functions of education in a society is normally in two ways. First, to provide the appropriate number of labor, or we mean by labor force, or hands, expertise to promote production and growth in the economy. Then it is not only the numbers, but education has to also improve upon the quality. And so we have two dimensions: the quantitative dimension of the economic functions of education, then we have the qualitative dimension of the economic functions of education. When you take the quantitative dimension, we are looking at, like I said, the rightful number of labor force. How many teachers do we need? How many doctors do we need? How many musicians? How many technicians? How many accountants? So I was asking in class, if we need more medical doctors, should we go and see the deity in my village, or we should put structures in place to produce them? And they all answer in unison: we produce them through education, formal training and preparation. Yes, that is it. So if we don't have enough engineers, what do? The same thing. We look forward to education. We structure education to produce more of such people. But you will soon see that we could have more of such people, yet we are not getting the best of service or output. Yeah. It means there is something wrong somewhere. So education does not only produce the numbers, it also ensures that there is quality in what it produces. So when we talk of the quality, we are looking at learners' submissiveness, productivity, creativity, drive, resourcefulness, hard work. All these are values that you can have two first-class students who are equally good academically, but one thing that will let student A be selected over student B might be attitude and values. Yes. So it is also important that these qualities are embedded in the minds of people. So in that sense, it means that we could say we have if you look at this carefully, you see that we have hard skills and soft skills. Hard skills, if you are studying geography, all the terms in geography, if you are studying mathematics, all the terms, what you need to know, the expression, the terminologies, all those you need to know in mathematics, in physics, those are the hard skills that we will say makes you a mathematician, a physician, a doctor. That is the hard skills. But the soft skills, which is the qualitative, has to do with the other things that will help you to function well in a social environment for you to be accepted. So you have to be your disposition and your habits must be top notch, and that you can attain it from education. So if you are not having it, then think of it, because very soon technology may not allow our hard skills to be harnessed or employed. What will let us be employed will be the other one, the values and attitudes.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. TETTEH. And so I think joining from Facebook, we have a number of comments there, but Believer Agojeto, Biology Department, and his question is, am I educated if I have learned something in the past, and due to the modern way of doing things, my skill has no space to be practiced in the modern era?
Repeat it.
Am I educated if I have learned something in the past, and due to the modern way of doing things, my skill has no space to be practiced in the modern era?
So I said earlier that education is contextual, time in context. Yeah, it means what you have learned has elapsed, but that does not really make you uneducated. It doesn't. Yes. Just that you have what you know has elapsed, and you need to, and that is why nowadays the issue of lifelong learning has come to stay. Yes.
And so,
so just something more that I want to add. When we were looking at the RSP test criteria, yes, you realize that he did mention that some cognitive perspective, which is not in it. So that knowledge shouldn't slip. You should be always at work.
Yeah.
Let's look at those are the formal sector. Maybe a dressmaker or a hairdresser. You see, these people go and learn their skills of fashion, and so they will not. Most of them, those who are active in the association and all that, when new fashion, fashion also keeps changing. When new ones come, they don't go back to wherever they learned it to say that this one you didn't teach it as now, so I've come back.
No.
So
you should be active all the time.
Let me share with you how
that
the
you will not
mechanics
live.
are working these days. You
Okay.
know, those days they were taught with, when you send your car, it's let's try and see if it will work. Sometimes they are not even so sure of the fault and all that. But this time, the moment you take your car there, they brought new electronic testers and all that. They just put it on, and it will be able to detect and even offer solutions as to how that problem can be treated. These are people who were taught with the traditional sense. That knowledge did not lie there. For you to say that, as for me, the thing is no more in this. I'm here to see a kind of knowledge that has expired. To say that, as for this thing, we won't need it again in life. You upgrade. You make improvements. So everybody, like we said initially, we cannot have a human being on earth who is not educated. Everybody is educated to some breadth.
Yeah. So the underlying thing is that as people who have availed themselves to be trained as teachers, what you must put in your mind is that teaching is a lifelong endeavor, and because it is a learning curve that you always engage in. Yes. Once a teacher, always a teacher, until you go.
Yes. I'm Owusu Godwin Boache, Department of Art Education. My question is, why must education be more in our culture? Because nowadays, some of our cultures have been changed from the past. I don't really get the question, but I'm sure he wants to know.
Why should the, excuse me, please take it again.
Why, he says, why must education be more in our culture? I don't really, because nowadays some of our cultures has been changed from the past. I'm really struggling with that. Then we have Benis from the Food and Nutrition Department. I want to ask, practical aspects of education, please, where does it fall in the various types of education, either formal or informal? So if it is in school, it is part of the formal. If it is on the side, non-formal, where there is no structured curriculum. I remember in senior high school there was this saloon that was closer to our school, and there were days you could see all the apprentices lining with their kneeling down and waving at cars. informal. So
Discipline.
everything is everything. When the madam feels that today you should just fetch water and pour it on the ground, that is your duty.
I'm sure it was a form of discipline, maybe punishment,
Yeah,
because
so
they.
that is informal.
Yeah.
Bismarck Edujemfi from Political Science Department. Here are my questions. How can education system adapt to changing societal needs? What are the strengths and weaknesses of informal education? My name is Anita from the Textile and Fashion Department. Please, I want to ask that since TETTeh certificate cannot be used to apply for any formal institute, that cannot be so. Because TETTeh, they are part of the formal education that we have. Can it be classified under non-formal education? No, we said that TETTeh is formal education, so we don't need to. So, Miss Miriam, I don't know whether you may want to react to Bismarck Edujemfi's question.
Kindly.
The first one says, how can
education system adapt to changing needs of society? And I'm sure
how can education systems adapt to the changing needs of society?
When we are talking about the determinants,
the curriculum has a role to play. So, as far as the characteristics of the curriculum is concerned, we said that the curriculum is based on the needs of society. So these needs of society is what curriculum developers look at. Then we plan programs, courses, subjects around it for learners to study. By so doing, when these learners receive the education, they are going to make changes in the society or solve societal problems.
Okay, so Dorcas Benin.
But we will discuss more on this later in the course. When we get to the curriculum development, we will look at it.
I'm Dorcas Benin from the Political Science Department. My question is, if everyone is educated, then where from the word illiterate and literate?
I like this question. It's a very good one. That is very thoughtful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have educated illiterate.
Yeah. So if everybody is educated, in a sense, by our definition, especially Castle's definition, that education is what happens to a person the day they are born to the day they die. In that sense, yes. Literacy and what?
Illiteracy.
No, she used to say literate and what?
Illiterate.
Literate and illiterate. Okay. So literacy, in fact, the definition of literacy has gone through a lot of changes. It used to be that your inability, if you are able to read and write, then you are literate. But we are also seeing that that is not necessarily literate, but you are lettered. Others also say if you are literate, it means you are enlightened. You are enlightened, which is not necessarily able to read and write. Yes. And then nowadays, the definition of literacy has changed gradually. It is changing. It is now, they are now bringing in the issue of your ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. So if you are not able to do that, then you are illiterate.
But if you have gone to school and you've been taught personal hygiene, you drink water and you just leave it anywhere on campus, are people not right to say that you are illiterate?
Though you have gone to school,
yes,
yet you are behaving like this.
Yes.
That is what you said earlier. Educated illiterate.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. That one is attitude issue. So you know how to read and write, you speak the best of your language, you know a lot, yet
so the person schooled, but the person was not educated.
The person lacks basic.
But even if you schooled, you see, you should you learn.
No.
Even if you are schooled, the school has taught you to drop your litters at the right place in the bin, the trash. So why do you leave it anywhere? They will tell you I must get to work for the Zoom live.
So the issue of the economic functions of education, the qualitative aspect comes in. You lack the qualitative dimension of the function of education.
Although we are producing the numbers, but we are not getting people with the right dispositions.
Yeah. Do you know something? We have a problem. In Ghana, look at the institutions that are sanctioned, mandated to train teachers. So many. Every year, look at the number of people who pass out. Yes, we still lack or we have inadequate teachers in this country. It means the education we have is unable to equip the people to remain in teaching, right? But there's another economic issue. Once the opportunities are not there, We are not opening up to employ them. Yes. What do you think they will do? Yeah. You are not motivating them. You are not paying them. What do you think they will do? So we have a systemic problem.
So let me read this message, and already it's funny. Jessica Tano is my alphabetical name. Department of Food and Nutrition. Please, what is the role of federal government in education? And I'm sure these are the determinant issues, and we'll talk about it when we get there. So we want to take the last function of education, which is the political function of education. And I'll start with Miss Miriam.
Okay, so on the political functions of education, we are looking at education preparing us so that we can function correctly. These are some of the issues that, from where we just ended. That you take your water, you drop it anywhere, you go to the lecture hall and you don't mind when you write a paper, it doesn't go well, you just bang the tables and chairs and all that. I mean, it is so absurd. So when we are able to function correctly, we say that yes, political socialization is something that has been addressed or met. So through education, we learn how we learn to be politically competent, we learn to be responsible, we learn to be law-abiding citizens here and there. So politically, we are not looking at joining any national political party, far from that. But our ability to reason, our ability to be competent in whatever we do, so that later years, because we are the future, especially the youth, we are the future of the country, and so it is important that we deliberately, through education, prepare people so that they will be responsible. If you have the skills, the attitude, you are employed, if the cultural values have been transmitted to you, when it comes to social, you can socialize wherever you find yourself, but you are not responsible, there will be a challenge. So it is important that, having received some transformation or education through our culture, through socialization, economically we are well to do and all that, it is important that we become responsible. Whichever office we hold, we need to be responsible over the day in the democracy has come to stay. So when you're going to cast your ballot, for example, don't say I have taken money from all the candidates, so I'm going to vote for all the three of them. At the end of the day, it will not be counted. When it comes to payment of taxes, we need to pay. So it is important that we become responsible to our nation. We have so many patriotic songs. God bless our homeland, Ghana. I promise on my honor. Yenara Assassini. We have it in the various. All these things try to rekindle the spirit of patriotism, so that we see the role that past leaders have played. It can be at the global stage, at the continental stage, or the Ghanaian space. Then we build on it from there.
All right. I don't know if you
yes, a little to add. Yeah, that you can be politically competent, but you may not be politically responsible, and that we are seeing in our country. We have, when we say competence, about skill, how skillful you are in doing something. So you may be very skillful in politics, and when we say politics, not the national one alone or the district assembly election or national. No, even in our house there is politics. So how you are able to cunningly convince your dad to send you that money, and find a way to convince your mom that daddy has not sent you money, it's all politics. You see, now you can be skillful.
Is it because we just celebrated Father's Day? So anyway, that is just what.
Yeah. So that is politics. So politics is not the national ones alone, but yes. What we now you can be competent, skillful in doing these things, but you may not be responsible.
So there was a time I asked a course rep that, yes, he claims he's a course rep, but he'll be my course rep. Because though the people have voted for him as the general course rep, me, I don't see that course rep in him.
Because she might have used some skillful ways to speak to them, to convince them they voted for him. Her or him. Right. But then you found out that she is not responsible, or he or she is not responsible.
Yes. So we have series of questions, and I think some of the questions go beyond the studio, so we may have to treat some of them in our various lecture theatres. Please, I'm Belinda Pia from the Food and Nutrition Department. How can education affect the society negatively? I'm Deborah Pia from Food and Nutrition. I'm a teacher in a school, and due to education and curriculum change, my course is no more learnt in this. In this case, am I still educated? If yes, which type of education, since my knowledge is no more needed? I'm here to see a teacher who has been sacked from a school because the subject is no more in the curriculum. I'm here to see one. Because we don't change subject entirely. We do innovation and reform, and definitely there is no way we will say you are not going to teach anything connected to what you were trained for. That is why most of the time we have subject A and even subject B. So that if you don't find this subject there, you may find let's use the right term, analogous subject there. My name is Madam B. Abraham Bigabil, Art Education. My questions are, how do you think education can address social inequalities and promote social justice? What are some criticisms of the current education system, and how can they be addressed? How does education perpetuate or challenge existing power structures? And that's why I said some of these are for classroom discussions, because this is just an introduction. Dr. Ayete from Biology Department, please kindly revisit the functions of education under economic and culture. Jessica Tano is my name. Please, how can we address the achievement gap between students from different socioeconomic backgrounds? All these are issues that may pop up in a subsequent discussions, and so I'm sure we don't have to. Under the economic and the culture, all we're saying is that we can use education as a tool to either conserve our culture or to make changes in our culture. So that if you go to a village and there is a practice that you feel, as for these things, they are not in tune with modern trends, then you make changes. But if you feel that there are some that we need to protect them using our blood and our toil, then you do so. Economically, we said education has to perform the quantitative dimension of the economic function and the qualitative dimension. And we said quantitative has to do with the numbers, producing the right number of people to fill the various or to satisfy the various aspects of our economic life. Then qualitatively, we are looking at the behaviors, the attitudes that this so-called right number of people are bringing to their field of work. So I'll take your final words, Mr. Tete.
Yes, there was a question, and I'll use that as a final thing. It was that how can education affect society negatively? Yeah, it's a very good question, in a sense that, yes, education has a negative, and we said it here, that is a dysfunction of education, DYS. Good. Now, how? She wants perhaps some examples. So, just one. Yes, education, for example, history. In as much as we want to educate ourselves about our past and how that can educate us for the future, we may end up rekindling heads. Because we want to educate people on the coups in Ghana, you'll be surprised that we may be rekindling some past experiences that some group of people may not be happy with, and that can rather not put the dog, how do we say, the dog to lie or to sleep. That will not settle the matter. It will continue to rekindle the issues, the emotions in our mind. So education, so in as much as we don't want to forget our past, we also need to make sure that we know how to. But a more serious one is, you are trained as you have gone to school, you came to UW, you are enlightened in your area, but you also through UW studied IT, either through the course that you did, information ICT. So you are good. Then you one day find yourself in a bank or in a society or anywhere, and you use your knowledge to do some dubious things. You see, what it means is that the school you attended was able to give you the hard skills, but it could not give you enough of the qualitative function or the attitudes and values that will help you to eschew anything that you could use that knowledge you have attained to do negatively. So if you have knowledge of something and you are using it to do bad things, you are making the society see that education is bad. That is why I have a problem with people who come to the university. You go back home and you have almost naked yourself. You are making the people say that university you see. So these are some of the things. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes, Miss Miriam.
Yeah. So I think that it has been fully addressed. But by way of my last words, we want to thank dear listeners, especially the level 100s, that it has been a very interactive session. And so all these functions of education, the arguments they are raising, when we try to contextualize it in RSP test criteria for what counts as education, then we realize that some of these things, the moment we become committed, the moment we talk of having knowledge and understanding of all that is being done here, so in the lecture halls, our students shouldn't expect that they would memorize their way through, and then at the end of the day they'll become formed or trained like the origin of the word. So it is important that whatever we are teaching, they try to understand, have knowledge and understanding, so that at the end of the day they can form their own mental or cognitive perspectives of all these issues. So that is a letter that I want to leave with them, to remind them that education is for life. It is a lifelong learning process that we find ourselves in. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. It's been an enjoyable session having you all in the studios. This evening we looked at the functions of education. Specifically, we started from the meaning of education. We traced the etymology. We looked at the types of education that we have, and then we looked at the functions of education in general. We are saying that if you want to see all the functions or the reasons why we educate, we cannot exhaust everything in this very studio, and that's why we looked at the social, the cultural, economic, and the political. I was quite privileged to have in the studios
Miriam, OGAH,
and Alex TETTEH.
Stephen KWAKYE-APAU is my name. We are coming from the Department of Educational Foundations, School of Education and Lifelong Learning. God willing, we meet same time next week. Have a blessed evening and stay out of trouble. Bye-bye.